History remembers kings and generals, the men who led armies and ruled nations. But behind the throne, there were women who quietly financed it all. Queens who pawned their jewels to send explorers across oceans. Widows who kept entire banking houses alive. And dynasties where female hands signed the contracts that decided wars, empires, and crowns. They didn't march into battle. They didn't carry swords, but they controlled something far more powerful: money. And in doing so, these women shaped history in ways most people have long forgotten. This is the untold story of the Queens of Finance. Spain, 1492. Christopher Columbus had a dream: to sail west across the Atlantic and reach Asia. But dreams don't pay for ships, supplies, or crews. Dreams need money. Kings turned him away. Merchants laughed. No one was willing to gamble on such a dangerous voyage. But then, he found someone who listened: Queen Isabella of Castile. Isabella wasn't just a ruler. She was an investor. She saw beyond the risk. She saw opportunity. When others hesitated, she put her own fortune on the line. She even pledged her royal jewels as collateral to finance the voyage. And that gamble? It changed the world. Columbus reached the New World, and soon Spain's ships returned loaded with gold and silver. That wealth transformed Spain into one of the richest and most powerful empires in history. Armies were funded. Palaces were built. The crown gained influence across Europe. And it all started with a queen who was willing to write the check when no one else would. Isabella's decision shows something powerful. Money doesn't just support empire. It creates empire. Without her, there might never have been a Spanish Golden Age. France, 16th century. Catherine de Medici wasn't born a queen. She was born into the Medici family, the most powerful banking dynasty in Europe. Money ran through her veins. When she married into the French royal family, she didn't just bring beauty or a noble name. She brought finance. And when her husband died, leaving the crown in crisis, Catherine stepped forward. As queen and regent, she controlled France during some of its darkest years. Armies needed funding. Palaces demanded gold. Rivals circled like wolves. And Catherine used every financial trick she knew to keep her dynasty alive. She arranged marriages like business mergers, tying France to powerful allies. She manipulated grain markets to weaken her enemies. She financed wars, bribed nobles, and poured money into art and architecture to show her strength. To some, she was ruthless. To others, she was brilliant. But one thing was clear: Catherine understood that politics without money is powerless. Behind the crown, behind the throne, behind the chaos of French wars, stood a woman who used finance as her weapon. While kings fought on the battlefield, Catherine de Medici ruled from the treasury. Not every woman wore a crown. Some worked in the shadows, but their influence was just as powerful. Across Europe, from Italy to the Netherlands, women quietly kept the wheels of finance turning. When husbands or fathers died, widows often stepped in to run the family's banking house. And they didn't just hold the business. They managed it. They approved loans. They negotiated contracts. They kept credit networks alive when men were gone. Some became silent partners, hidden in the background of official records, but essential to the flow of money. Daughters arranged dowries that acted like massive financial transfers between families, sometimes bigger than royal treasuries. Others maintained the ledgers, tracking every coin, every debt, every investment that kept commerce moving. Think about that. At a time when women were denied power in courts and councils, they held power in the books. They could ruin a rival with a denied loan. They could secure an alliance by releasing funds. They could preserve a dynasty by keeping credit flowing in times of crisis. These were the invisible architects of Europe's economy, not queens in palaces, but women at desks, with quills and ledgers, shaping the future with ink and numbers. In the world of empires, marriage wasn't just about love. It was business. It was strategy. It was finance. For noble women and queens, marriage was the tool that moved money across borders. A dowry wasn't a gift. It was capital. Gold, silver, land, even entire trade routes could be transferred with a bride. One marriage could inject more wealth into a crown than years of taxation. Queens and noblewomen became the brokers of these deals. They weren't just brides. They were negotiators, investors, and diplomats. Through them, families secured alliances, funded wars, and expanded influence. Catherine de Medici arranged dynastic marriages that tied France to powerful allies, strengthening her position at court. Isabella's own daughter, Joanna, was married into the Habsburg dynasty, linking Spain's wealth with the empire that would dominate Europe for centuries. And behind each of these unions was money, contracts thicker than any love letter, bargains written not in poetry, but in numbers. Even outside the courts, wealthy merchant families used marriage as a way to consolidate fortunes. Two houses became one, capital doubled overnight, and often the woman at the center of it all was the one ensuring the deal stuck. Think of marriage in this world as a kind of financial merger, not just uniting hearts, but uniting banks, estates, and empires. For these women, influence didn't come from the battlefield. It came from the wedding altar and the wealth they carried with them. The stories of Isabella, Catherine, and the women in the shadows might feel distant, but their impact is anything but forgotten. The systems they shaped, credit, dowries, silent partnerships, dynastic finance, became the blueprint for modern banking. What began with jewels pawned for voyages, with ledgers balanced by widows, and with marriages sealed by gold, evolved into central banks, government bonds, and international credit networks. Isabella's gamble on Columbus foreshadowed venture capital, investing in risky expeditions for massive returns. Catherine's manipulation of markets and credit was an early lesson in state finance and monetary policy, and the widows and daughters who kept banking houses alive created practices that would grow into global finance families and private banks. Today, when we talk about Wall Street, the IMF, or the World Bank, we imagine them as modern inventions, but their DNA traces back to these women, the ones who quietly held the keys to wealth and power when history was busy writing about kings. History remembers kings with crowns, generals with armies, and emperors with empires. But behind them were women who financed it all, queens who risked their fortunes, widows who ran banks in secret, daughters who carried wealth across borders through marriage. They didn't always sit on thrones, but they shaped them. They didn't always write the laws, but they financed the rulers who did. The untold truth is simple. Money built empires, and women controlled more of it than history ever admitted. So here's my question to you. Who had the bigger impact? Isabella of Castile, Catherine de Medici, or the shadow bankers who worked behind the scenes? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. And if you want more hidden stories of how money shaped history, don't forget to subscribe to Economic Chronicles. Because history isn't just about kings and battles. It's about the economics that built our world. The lesson is clear. Empires rise on money. And for centuries, women were the hidden hands guiding it.